deep in the hearts of Massachusetts. No one thought the charming law student could be behind a string of brutal disappearances across multiple states, until a routine traffic stop unraveled one of the most notorious killing sprees in American history. Welcome to Echo Case File, where we uncover the chilling truths behind the world's most infamous crimes. In this episode, we delve into 10 harrowing cases that expose the darkest sides of human nature. Remember, these are real events, real victims, and real perpetrators who shocked the world. Case 1. Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont, to Eleanor Louise Cowell, an unwed mother who initially raised him under the guise that he was her younger brother to avoid the stigma of illegitimacy. His early life was marked by confusion and instability. He later discovered his true parentage, which some believe contributed to his deep-seated rage. Bundy grew up in Philadelphia with his grandparents, but the family moved to Tacoma, Washington, when he was 5. There, his mother married Johnny Culpepper Bundy, a hospital cook, and Ted took his stepfather's last name. Despite appearing as an intelligent and charismatic young man, Bundy harbored dark impulses from a young age. He excelled academically, attending the University of Puget Sound before transferring to the University of Washington, where he studied psychology. It was during this time that he began dating Elizabeth Klopfer, a single mother who would later play a pivotal role in his downfall. Bundy's criminal activities are believed to have started in the early 1970s. His first confirmed victim was Karen Sparks, a University of Washington student attacked in her basement apartment on January 4, 1974. She was bludgeoned with a metal rod from her bed frame and sexually assaulted, surviving, but with permanent brain damage. Just weeks later, on February 1st, Linda and Healy vanished from her room in the same university district. Her skull was later found on Taylor Mountain, a site where Bundy dumped several bodies. Throughout 1974, Bundy escalated his attacks, targeting young women who often resembled his ex-girlfriend Stephanie Brooks, long dark hair parted in the middle. On April 17th, Susan Elaine Rancourt disappeared from Central Washington State College. Roberta Kathleen Parks went missing on May 6th from Oregon State University. In June, Brenda Carroll Ball and Georgianne Hawkins were abducted in Washington. The summer of 1974 saw Bundy strike at Lake Sammamish State Park near Seattle. On July 14th, he approached multiple women using a fake arm sling to solicit help loading a sailboat onto his beige Volkswagen Beetle. Janice Ott and Denise Naslund were lured away and never seen alive again. Witnesses described a man calling himself Ted, which provided a crucial lead. By August, Bundy had moved to Salt Lake City to attend law school at the University of Utah, extending his terror to new territories. On August 16th, he killed an unidentified hitchhiker near Boise, Idaho. In September, he murdered Carol Duranch. No, wait. Duranch survived an attempted abduction on November 8th, when Bundy posed as a police officer and tried to handcuff her in a shopping mall parking lot. She escaped, providing a description that matched the Lake Sammamish suspect. Bundy's rampage continued in Colorado. On October 2nd, Nancy Wilcox vanished in Holiday, Utah. Melissa Smith disappeared on October 18th from Midvale, and Laura and M on October 31st from Lehigh. Moving to Colorado, he killed Karen Eileen Campbell on January 12, 1975, at the Wildwood Inn in Snowmass Village. Julie Cunningham went missing on March 15th from Vail, and Denise Lynn Oliverson on April 6th from Grand Junction. Susan Curtis disappeared on June 28th during a youth conference at Brigham Young University. Back in Washington, authorities were connecting the dots. In August 1975, Bundy was arrested in Granger, Utah, after a traffic stop revealed suspicious items in his car: a ski mask, handcuffs, an ice pick, and pantyhose. Carol Duranch identified him in a lineup, leading to his conviction for aggravated kidnapping in 1976, sentencing him to 1 to 15 years in prison. But Bundy wasn't done. While awaiting trial for the Colorado murders, he escaped twice. First, on June 7, 1977, he jumped from a second-story window of the Pitkin County Courthouse Library in Aspen during a recess. He was recaptured 6 days later, emaciated after surviving on scraps in the mountains. His second escape on December 30, 1977, was more calculated. He starved himself to fit through a hole in his cell ceiling, crawling through the jail's ductwork to freedom. Bundy fled to Florida, where his killing spree reached its gruesome peak. On January 15, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University in Tallahassee. In a frenzied attack lasting less than 30 minutes, he bludgeoned Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy to death, severely injuring Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner. Bowman was strangled with a nylon stocking, and Levy was bitten on her buttock and nipple, bite marks that would later prove damning in court. That same night, he attacked Cheryl Thomas in her nearby duplex, but she survived. On February 9th, Bundy abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Diane Leach from her junior high school in Lake City, Florida. Her body was found 2 months later in an abandoned pig shed, showing signs of sexual assault and strangulation. Bundy was pulled over on February 15th in Pensacola driving a stolen orange Volkswagen Beetle. After a struggle, he was arrested, and his identity as the fugitive Ted Bundy was confirmed. Trials ensued. In Miami, for the Chi Omega murders, Bundy acted as his own attorney, turning the courtroom into a spectacle. Forensic odontologist Richard Suverin matched the bite marks on Levy to Bundy's distinctive crooked teeth. On July 24, 1979, he was convicted of 2 murders and 3 attempted murders, receiving death sentences. In a separate trial for Leach's murder, he was again sentenced to death on February 9, 1980. During his time on death row at Florida State Prison, Bundy confessed to 30 murders, though investigators believe the true number could be higher, possibly up to 100. He detailed his methods, approaching women feigning injury or authority, subduing them with blows, then transporting them to secluded areas for assault and murder. He often revisited crime scenes to engage in necrophilia and kept trophies like heads or clothing. Bundy spoke of a malignant entity compelling him, but psychologists diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, narcissism, and possibly bipolar disorder. His confessions helped close cases across Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, Idaho, and Florida. On January 24, 1989, Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Rayford Prison. His last words were, "I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." Crowds cheered outside as his death was announced, marking the end of a monster who had evaded justice for far too long. As the ashes of Bundy's reign of terror settled, another predator was quietly emerging in the Midwest, one whose crimes would redefine horror with their grotesque intimacy. Case 2. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. His childhood was turbulent. His mother suffered from depression and attempted suicide, while his father, a chemist, was often absent. Dahmer showed early signs of disturbance, collecting roadkill and dissecting animals in the woods behind his home in Bath, Ohio, where the family moved when he was 8. He struggled with isolation, alcoholism starting in his teens, and emerging homosexual desires that he suppressed due to shame. After high school graduation in 1978, Dahmer's parents divorced, leaving him alone in the family home. That summer, he committed his first murder. On June 18th, he picked up 18-year-old hitchhiker Stephen Mark Hicks, lured him back with promises of beer, bludgeoned him with a dumbbell, strangled him, and dismembered the body. He buried the remains in the backyard, later digging them up to dissolve in acid and crush the bones. Dahmer enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1979, stationed in West Germany as a combat medic, but was discharged in 1981 for alcoholism. Returning to Ohio, he was arrested for disorderly conduct and moved to West Allis, Wisconsin, to live with his grandmother. Dahmer's killing spree intensified in 1987. On September 26th, he met 25-year-old Stephen Walter Twomey at a gay bar, took him to a hotel, and killed him during a blackout rage. He transported the body to his grandmother's basement, dismembered it, and disposed of the parts. This act unlocked something in Dahmer. He later said it was the point where he lost control. In 1988, he murdered James Edward Dockstader, a 14-year-old Native American boy, on January 16th, followed by Richard Guerrero, 22, on March 24th. His grandmother, disturbed by the smells and late-night visitors, asked him to move out in 1989. Dahmer relocated to apartment 213 at 924 North 25th Street in Milwaukee, a low-rent building that became his house of horrors. In 1989, he killed Anthony Thomas Sears on March 25th, keeping his skull as a trophy. Dahmer's pattern involved luring men, often young, gay minorities from bars or bus stops, with offers of money for photos or sex. He drugged them with sleeping pills and alcohol, strangled them, performed necrophilia, dismembered the bodies, and experimented with preservation. He attempted to create zombies by drilling into skulls and injecting acid or boiling water to lobotomize victims while alive, hoping for compliant sex slaves. This failed horrifically with several victims. The 90s saw his crimes accelerate. On May 27, 1990, he murdered Raymond Lamont Smith, 32. Ricky Lee Beeks, 33, followed on May 29th. Wait, no, Beeks was later. Let's correct. Edward Warren Smith on June 14th. Ernest Marquez Miller on September 2nd. David Courtney Thomas on September 24th. And Curtis Durrell Strader on February 18th, 1991. In April 1991, Errol Lindsay, 19, became a victim of the lobotomy experiment. He died after injection. Tony Anthony Hughes, 31, a deaf-mute man, was killed on May 24th. On May 27th, 14-year-old Conorak Synthesumphone escaped Dahmer's apartment naked and drugged, but was returned by police who believed Dahmer's lie that he was his 19-year-old lover. Hours later, Dahmer killed him. This incident haunted Milwaukee police for years. After dropping out of Northwestern Business College, Gacy moved to Las Vegas briefly, working as a mortuary attendant, a job that fueled his later fascinations. He returned to Chicago, married Marlyn Myers in 1964, and managed her family's Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises in Waterloo, Iowa. There, he joined the JCs, earning accolades for community service while hosting parties that involved alcohol and wife swapping. But beneath this facade, Gacy's dark side emerged. In 1968, he was convicted of sodomizing a teenage employee, Mark Miller, and attempting to assault another boy. Sentenced to 10 years at Anamosa State Penitentiary, he served only 18 months, earning parole for good behavior. His wife divorced him during incarceration, taking their 2 children. Paroled in 1970, Gacy returned to Chicago, living with his mother before buying a ranch-style house at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park Township. He remarried Carol Hoff in 1972, a childhood acquaintance, but the union soured as Gacy's behavior grew erratic. He started PDM Contractors, a successful remodeling business that employed young men, providing him access to potential victims. Gacy became Pogo the Clown, performing at children's parties and hospitals, a persona that masked his predatory nature. His killings began in 1972. On January 3rd, he lured 15-year-old Timothy Jack McCoy from a bus terminal, stabbed him after a perceived threat during breakfast, and buried him under the crawl space of his home. This act, Gacy later confessed, gave him a mind-numbing orgasm. The murders escalated. In 1974, after his divorce from Hoff, who complained of strange odors and Gacy's pornography stash, he killed 17-year-old John Butkovich, a PDM employee who demanded back pay. Butkovich was strangled and buried in the crawl space. Throughout 1976 and 1977, Gacy targeted young males, often runaways or hustlers from Chicago's Bughouse Square or bus stations. He used a handcuff trick to restrain them, posing as a cop or offering jobs, then chloroformed, tortured, and strangled them with a rope tourniquet he called the rope trick. Victims included Daryl Julius Sampson, 16, on April 6, 1976, Samuel G. Dodd Stapleton, 14, on May 14, Randall Wayne Reffitt, 15, the same day, Michael Lawrence Bonin, 17, on June 3, Billy Wayne Carroll, 16, on June 13, Rick Johnston, 17, on August 6, and many more. By 1978, the crawl space filled up. Gacy buried bodies in his yard and dumped 4 in the Des Plaines River when space ran out. His victims totaled 33, aged 14 to 21, including Gregory John Godzik, 17, John Allen Saiconi, 19, John Stephen Prestige, 20, Matthew Walter Bowman, 19, Robert Edward Gilroy, 18, John Anthony Mowry, 19, Russell Lloyd Nelson, 21, Robert Winch, 16. Tommy Joe Bowling, 20. David Paul Talsma, 19. Timothy David O'Rourke, 20. Frank William Landingin, 19. James Byron Hawkinson, 16, and others identified years later through DNA. The house reeked of lime and decay, which Gacy blamed on moisture problems. The investigation intensified after 15-year-old Robert Jerome Pius disappeared on December 11, 1978, from the Nissan pharmacy where he worked. Pius told his mother he was meeting a contractor, Gacy, about a job. Lieutenant Joseph Kozenzak led the probe, noting Gacy's prior conviction. Surveillance revealed Gacy dumping items in the river. A search warrant on December 21 uncovered a class ring, clothing, a receipt linking to Pius, and human remains. Gacy confessed on December 22, detailing his cruising for victims and burials. Excavations unearthed 26 bodies in the crawl space, 3 in the yard, and 4 in the river. Charged with 33 murders, Gacy's trial began February 6, 1980, in Cook County. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, with experts debating multiple personality disorder versus antisocial personality. The jury convicted him on March 13 after 2 hours, sentencing him to death for 12 counts and life for the rest. On death row at Menard Correctional Center, Gacy painted clowns, gave interviews denying guilt, and filed appeals. He was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994, his last words mocking the process. The case highlighted police oversights, as several victims had reported assaults by Gacy earlier. 8 bodies remain unidentified, with ongoing DNA efforts. Gacy's home was demolished, the site now a vacant lot. Shifting from the clown prince of terror to a night stalker who turned Los Angeles into a city of fear, our next case uncovers a Satanist whose random attacks paralyzed a metropolis. Case 4. Richard Ramirez. Ricardo Leyva Munoz Ramirez was born on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas, the youngest of 5 children to Julian Ramirez, a former policeman turned railway worker with a violent temper, and Mercedes Munoz, a factory worker exposed to chemicals during pregnancy. The family struggled in poverty, and Richard suffered epileptic seizures from age 2, possibly from head injuries inflicted by his father or a dresser fall at 5. At 12, another head trauma from a swing ended his football dreams. His cousin Miguel Mike Ramirez, a Green Beret Vietnam veteran, influenced him deeply, showing Polaroids of war atrocities, including raped and decapitated women. At 13, Richard witnessed Mike murder his wife, an event that traumatized yet fascinated him. Dropping out of Jefferson High School in 9th grade, Ramirez turned to drugs, burglary, and Satanism, inspired by AC/DC's Night Prowler and Anton LaVey's teachings. He moved to California in the late 1970s, living a transient life funded by thefts. His killing spree began on June 28, 1984, with the stabbing of 79-year-old Jenny Vincow in her Glassell Park apartment during a burglary. He slashed her throat so deeply she was nearly decapitated. The attack went unsolved initially. In 1985, the terror peaked. On March 17, he shot 22-year-old Maria Hernandez in Rosemead, but she survived by raising her hand. The bullet deflected off keys. Her roommate, 34-year-old Dale Yoshi Okazaki, was killed. Hours later, in Monterey Park, he murdered 30-year-old Cillian Veronica Ill. On March 27, in Whittier, he bludgeoned 64-year-old Vincent Charles Zazera and mutilated his 44-year-old wife Maxine Lavinia Zazera, gouging out her eyes. April 10 saw the assault on 63-year-old William Bill Doy in Monterey Park. He died later from a gunshot. On May 14, Ramirez broke into the home of 66-year-old Bill Doy. No, that's repeat. Actually, on May 29, he attacked 83-year-old Malvia Flores Keller and her 83-year-old invalid sister Blanche Wolfe in Monrovia, bludgeoning them with a hammer. Keller died the next day. The pattern involved home invasions at night, often in yellow-lit areas he believed warded off evil. He shot, stabbed, beat, and sexually assaulted victims, forcing some to swear to Satan. On May 30th, he raped a woman in Burbank. June 27th, he molested a 6-year-old in Arcadia. June 28th, he killed 32-year-old Patty Elaine Higgins in her home. July 2nd, 75-year-old Mary Louise Cannon was beaten to death. July 5th, 16-year-old Whitney Bennett survived a strangling in Sierra Madre. July 7th, 63-year-old Joyce Lucille Nelson was bludgeoned. July 20th, he murdered 61-year-old Maxon Carl Needing and his 68-year-old wife Lela Ellen Needing in Glendale, then hours later killed 32-year-old Chanaron Kovanath and assaulted his wife Somkid in Sun Valley. August 6th, in Northridge, he shot 38-year-old Christopher "Chris" Peterson and his 27-year-old wife Virginia, both surviving. August 8th, in Diamond Bar, he killed 35-year-old Elias Abawath and beat his 31-year-old wife Sakina. Ramirez left pentagrams, forced satanic oaths, and took souvenirs. Media dubbed him the Night Stalker, causing panic. Gun sales soared. Residents installed alarms. The break came from a stolen Toyota recovered in Rampart, yielding a fingerprint match to Ramirez via a new database. His mugshot from a prior arrest was broadcast on August 30th. On August 31st, in East Los Angeles, residents recognized him attempting a carjacking, chasing and beating him until police arrived. Charged with 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries, his trial started September 20th, 1989, after delays. Ramirez flashed pentagrams, proclaimed "Hail Satan," and attracted groupies. Convicted on all counts on September 20th, 1989, he received 19 death sentences on November 7th. On death row at San Quentin, he married Doreen Leoie in 1996. Diagnosed with B-cell lymphoma, Ramirez died of complications on June 7, 2013, at age 53, before execution. Case 5. Dennis Rader. Dennis Lynn Rader was born on March 9, 1945, in Pittsburgh, Kansas, the eldest of 4 sons to Dorothea May Cook and William Elvin Rader, a bookkeeper and utility worker respectively. Raised in a strict Lutheran household in Wichita, Rader exhibited early signs of disturbance, torturing animals, and harboring violent fantasies. He served in the United States Air Force from 1966 to 1970, stationed in Texas, Alabama, Okinawa, and South Korea, earning an honorable discharge as a sergeant. Returning to Wichita, he married Paula Dietz in 1971, a bookkeeper he met at church, and they had 2 children, a son and a daughter. Rader worked various jobs, including at a grocery store, an aircraft assembly line for Cessna, and later as an installer for ADT Security Services, which gave him knowledge of home layouts and alarm systems, skills he would twistedly apply. By day, Rader projected stability, a Boy Scout troop leader, president of his church congregation, and eventually a compliance officer for Park City, enforcing local ordinances with an authoritarian zeal that alienated neighbors. But beneath this veneer simmered a sadistic alter ego he dubbed BTK, for bind, torture, kill. His reign of terror began on January 15, 1974, with the slaughter of the Otero family. He cut the phone line to their home, entered through the back, and bound Joseph Otero, 38, his wife Julie, 33, son Joseph, 2, 9, and daughter Josephine, 11. After strangling the parents and boy, he hanged the girl in the basement, deriving gratification from her suffering. Rader left semen at the scene, a signature he repeated, though he claimed not to sexually assault victims post-mortem. The murders continued sporadically, designed to taunt authorities. On April 4, 1974, he stalked 21-year-old Catherine Bright, a college student, breaking into her apartment. When her brother Kevin unexpectedly arrived, Rader shot him twice, though Kevin survived. Rader then stabbed Catherine 11 times after binding her. In October 1974, Rader sent a letter to the Wichita Eagle newspaper detailing the Otero killings, signing it BTK, and proposing nicknames like the Wichita Strangler. This began a cat-and-mouse game with police and media. On March 17, 1977, he targeted Shirley V. Relford, 24, locking her 3 children in the bathroom before strangling her on her bed. That December 7th, he murdered 25-year-old Nancy Fox, a jewelry store clerk, after cutting her phone line and waiting inside her apartment. He called police from a payphone to report the homicide, his voice later broadcast in hopes of identification. Rader's compulsion included projects, stalking potential victims, whom he called PJs. He kept slick ads binders with magazine clippings of women and children in bondage poses, and a hit kit with rope, tape, and tools. In April 1979, he waited in 63-year-old Anna Williams' home, but left when she was late. He later mailed her a poem about the near miss. After a hiatus during which he focused on family and career, earning a degree in administration of justice from Wichita State University in 1991, Rader struck again. On September 16, 1986, he posed as a telephone repairman to enter the home of 28-year-old Vicki Lynn Wegerle, strangling her while her toddler played nearby. His final known victim was 62-year-old Dolores D. Davis on January 19, 1991, abducted from her home, bound, and strangled in a remote area. For years, the case went cold, but Rader craved attention. In March 2004, after a Wichita Eagle article suggested BTK was dead or imprisoned, he resumed communication, sending packages with victim items, puzzles, and Barbie dolls posed in death scenes to media and police. One included a cereal box labeled BTK with autobiographical chapters. His downfall came via technology. In January 2005, he asked police if a floppy disk could be traced. Lieutenant Ken Landwehr lied, saying no. Rader sent a disk with a test message, but metadata revealed it was from Christ Lutheran Church, used by Dennis. A DNA sample from his daughter Carrie's medical records matched semen from crime scenes. Arrested on February 25, 2005, while driving home for lunch, Rader confessed during 32 hours of interviews, detailing 10 murders with clinical detachment, blaming a Factor X demon. Charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder, Rader pleaded guilty on June 27, 2005, in Sedgwick County District Court, waiving a trial. His graphic courtroom descriptions horrified families. On August 18, Judge Gregory Waller sentenced him to 10 consecutive life terms, 400 years minimum, since Kansas had no death penalty for pre-1994 crimes. Incarcerated at El Dorado Correctional Facility, Rader's wife divorced him, receiving an emergency settlement. He has written poetry and corresponded with other killers, but appeals failed. The case spurred the book, Bind, Torture, Kill by investigators and inspired reforms in cold case handling. Victims' families advocated for privacy laws after Rader auctioned drawings. From the self-proclaimed BTK who toyed with authorities for decades to a truck painter whose body count made him the most prolific serial killer in United States history, our next case flows through the murky waters of the Pacific Northwest. Case 6. Gary Ridgway. Gary Leon Ridgway was born on February 18, 1949, in Salt Lake City, Utah, the middle child of Mary Rita Steinman and Thomas Newton Ridgway, a bus driver prone to violent outbursts. Raised in McMicken Heights near SeaTac, Washington, Ridgway wet the bed until his teens, for which his domineering mother humiliated him with public scrubbings. He harbored resentment toward her, fantasizing about killing her, and showed early cruelty by drowning a cat and stabbing a 6-year-old boy at 16. Dyslexic and held back in school, he graduated high school in 1969, joined the Navy, and served in Vietnam aboard the USS Turner Joy, where he contracted gonorrhea from prostitutes, fueling his hatred of sex workers. Discharged in 1971, Ridgway married his high school girlfriend Marcia Winslow, but the union dissolved amid mutual infidelity. He worked as a truck painter at Kenworth and Renton for 30 years, known for reliability but odd behavior, like crying after sermons at his Pentecostal church. His second marriage to Judith Mawson in 1975 ended in 1981 after she discovered his choking fetish. Ridgway frequented prostitutes along the SeaTac Strip, a Pacific Highway South stretch rife with motels and runaways. His murders began in 1982, amid economic downturns that increased vulnerable women on the streets. The first confirmed victim was 16-year-old Wendy Lee Caulfield, found strangled in the Green River on July 15, 1982. Ridgway targeted sex workers and runaways, picking them up in his truck, having sex, then strangling them from behind to avoid scratches. He dumped bodies in wooded areas or the Green River, sometimes posing them with rocks or debris to contaminate evidence. By August, more bodies surfaced. Deborah Lynn Bonner, 23, Marcia Faye Chapman, 31, Opal Charmaine Mills, 16, and Cynthia Jean Hines, 17. The King County Sheriff's Office formed the Green River Task Force, led by Detective Dave Reichert, as the toll rose. Throughout 1983, victims included Carol and Christensen, 21, found with fish and sausage placed on her, Kelly K. McGinnis, 18, Mary Bridget Meehan, 18, and many more. Ridgway returned to sites for necrophilia, moving bodies when development threatened. He passed a polygraph in 1984 after being flagged as a suspect. His home searched, bite marks noted matching a victim. But without DNA tech, he walked free. Marrying third wife Judith Lorraine Lynch in 1988, he slowed killings, claiming her love curbed urges, but still murdered sporadically. The list grew to 49 confirmed. Linda Jane Rule, 16. Denise Darcel Bush, 23. Shonda Leah Summers, 16. Shirley Marie Sherrill, 18. Rebecca Becky Marrero, 20. Colleen Renee Brockman, 15. Alma and Smith, 18. Dolores Laverne Williams, 17. Sandra Denise Major, 20, and others identified decades later. Many were teens escaping abuse, like Deborah Lorraine Estes, 15, and Marie M. Malvar, 18, whose boyfriend saw Ridgway's truck. In 1987, a tip from his ex-wife Marcia linked him, but evidence lagged. Advancements in DNA profiling broke the case. In 2001, semen from early victims matched Ridgway's sample from the 1984 search. Arrested November 30, 2001, outside Kenworth, he confessed to 48 murders to avoid death penalty, leading detectives to remains. In plea deal, he received 48 life sentences plus one, totaling 49, on December 18, 2003, in King County Superior Court. Judge Richard Jones called him a hunter of human beings. Ridgway detailed luring with photos of his son to build trust, strangling to feel power, and dumping in clusters. Incarcerated at Washington State Penitentiary, Ridgway cooperated for leniency, helping close cases. In 2010, Rebecca Marrero's remains were found, adding a 49th conviction in 2011. His third wife divorced him, shocked by revelations. The case cost over $15 million, inspired the book Green River, Running Red, Buy and Rule, and highlighted vulnerabilities of marginalized women, prompting task force reforms and DNA backlog initiatives. Case 7. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Carol Wuornos was born on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan, to Diane Wuornos, a teenager who abandoned her shortly after birth, and Leo Dale Pittman, a convicted child molester and psychopath who hanged himself in prison before Aileen ever met him. Raised by her maternal grandparents, Lori and Britta Wuornos, in Troy, Michigan, her childhood was a nightmare of abuse. Lori allegedly beat and sexually assaulted her, while neighborhood boys paid her for sexual acts starting at age 11. By 14, she was pregnant, possibly by her grandfather or a family friend, and gave up the baby for adoption. Expelled from home at 15 after Britta's death from liver failure. Amid rumors Aileen contributed by lacing her drinks, Aileen turned to hitchhiking and sex work to survive, sleeping in abandoned cars and woods. In 1974, at 18, Wuornos was arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado, for driving under the influence, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle. She drifted to Florida, marrying 69-year-old Louis Gratz Fell in 1976, but the union lasted 9 weeks after she assaulted him with his cane. Annulled, she returned to Michigan briefly, where her brother Keith died of cancer, leaving her a $9,000 insurance payout she squandered. Back in Florida, arrests piled up, armed robbery in 1981, forging checks in 1985, and grand theft auto. In 1986, she met 24-year-old Tyria Moore at a Daytona Beach gay bar. The two became lovers, living a nomadic life in motels, funded by Wuornos prostitution along Interstate 4 and Interstate 95. Wuornos' killing spree began in 1989, rooted, she claimed, in years of rape and violence from clients. On November 30, 1989, she shot 51-year-old Richard Charles Mallory, an electronics store owner with a history of sexual assault convictions, multiple times with a .22 caliber pistol in a wooded area near Ormond Beach. She dumped his body, stole his Cadillac, and pawned his belongings. Wuornos later said he tried to rape her, but investigators noted inconsistencies. 6 months later, on June 1, 1990, 43-year-old David Andrew Spears, a heavy equipment operator, was found shot 6 times along Highway 19 in Citrus County, his truck abandoned elsewhere. On June 6, 65-year-old Charles Edmund Kemper, a rodeo worker, was discovered in Pasco County, shot 9 times, his vehicle taken. The murders accelerated. On July 4, 50-year-old Peter Abraham Seams, a retired merchant seaman, vanished after leaving Jupiter, Florida. His car was later crashed by Wuornos and more in Orange Springs. Witnesses noting their descriptions, but Seams' body never found. On August 4, 47-year-old Troy Eugene Burress, a sausage delivery driver, was shot twice in Marion County. September 30th saw 56-year-old Charles Richard Dick Humphreys, a former police chief and child abuse investigator, killed with 6 bullets in Sumter County. The final victim, 62-year-old Walter Gino Antonio, a trucker and reserve police officer, was shot 4 times on November 19th in Dixie County. Authorities connected the dots through pawned items and the Seams car crash sketches, dubbing the suspect the Damsel of Death. On January 9, 1991, Wuornos was arrested outside the Last Resort Biker Bar in Port Orange for an outstanding warrant. Moore, located in Pennsylvania, agreed to wear a wire. In recorded calls, Wuornos confessed to acting alone to protect Moore. Charged with Mallory's murder first, her trial began January 13, 1992, in Volusia County. Defended by public attorneys, she testified to self-defense, detailing assaults, but prosecutors highlighted robbery motives and inconsistencies. Convicted on January 27 after 5 hours of deliberation, she received death on January 31, yelling obscenities at the jury. Subsequent trials followed. Guilty pleas for Burress, Humphreys, and Spears in May 1992, earning 3 more death sentences: life for Seams without trial, death for Antonio in November, and death for Kemper in February 1993. On death row at Florida State Prison for Women, Wuornos gave conflicting interviews, sometimes admitting thrill killing, other times insisting self-defense. Psychologists diagnosed borderline personality disorder and antisocial traits, linking to childhood trauma. Appeals cited ineffective counsel and media sensationalism, including the film Monster starring Charlize Theron, who won an Oscar portraying her. Governor Jeb Bush signed her execution warrant after she dropped appeals, declaring herself sane and ready. On October 9, 2002, Wuornos was executed by lethal injection at age 46. Her last words: "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6, like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back." Buried in Michigan, her case sparked debates on female serial killers, victim blaming, and the death penalty's application to abused women. Moore never faced charges, relocating under a new identity. Transitioning from a woman who killed men she claimed attacked her to a towering intellect, whose matricidal rage extended to Coed's. This next case probes the mind of a giant who dissected both bodies and psyches. Case 8. Edmund Kemper. Edmund Emil Kemper III was born on December 18, 1948, in Burbank, California, to Clarnell Elizabeth Stage and Edmund Emil Kemper Jr., a World War II veteran who worked as an electrician. The middle child with 2 sisters, Kemper's early life fractured when his parents divorced in 1957, his father remarrying and moving away. Living with his domineering mother in Helena, Montana, then back to California, Kemper endured psychological abuse. Clarnell locked him in the basement fearing he'd harm his sisters, called him a real weirdo, and belittled his size. He grew to 6 feet 9 inches by 15, weighing 300 pounds. Signs of disturbance emerged early. At 10, he buried the family cat alive, later decapitating it. At 13, he killed another cat with a machete. He fantasized about killing his mother, practicing with dolls by removing heads and hands. After running away to his father at 14, he was rejected and sent to live with paternal grandparents, Maud and Edmund Kemper Sr., on their North Fork ranch. On August 27, 1964, after an argument where Maud scolded him for laziness, 15-year-old Kemper shot her in the head with a .22 rifle, then stabbed her post-mortem. When his grandfather returned, Kemper shot him to spare him grief. He called his mother, who advised surrendering. Tried as a juvenile, psychiatrists diagnosed paranoid schizophrenia. He was committed to Atascadero State Hospital, where he befriended staff, memorized psychological tests, and was paroled at 21 on December 18, 1969, to his mother's custody in Aptos, California, against doctors' advice. Kemper attended community college, aspiring to be a police officer, but his height disqualified him. He worked odd jobs, including for the state highway department, and hung out at the jury room bar with cops, earning the nickname Big Ed. He dated a 16-year-old, but the relationship ended due to his possessiveness. Harboring necrophilic fantasies, he picked up hundreds of female hitchhikers, preparing a murder kit with handcuffs, knives, and bags. His spree began May 7, 1972, with 18-year-old Marian Pesci and Anita Mary Lucchesa, Fresno State students hitchhiking to Stanford. Kemper drove them to a secluded area, handcuffed Pesci, stabbed, and strangled her, then strangled Lucchesa. He took bodies to his apartment, dismembered them, had sex with parts, and dumped remains in the mountains. Heads were buried facing his mother's house symbolically. On September 14, 1972, he killed 15-year-old Aiko Coed, a Korean dance student hitchhiking to class in San Francisco. He suffocated her with a scarf after showing a gun, then assaulted and dismembered her body at home. In January 1973, 18-year-old Cynthia and Cindy Shaw was shot in the head after being lured into his car. He kept her body in his closet overnight before dismembering. Parts were tossed into the ocean, her head buried in the yard. February 5th saw 23-year-old Rosalind Heather Thorpe and 20-year-old Alice Helen Allison Lou picked up at UC Santa Cruz. Shot in the car, their bodies were processed at his mother's house while she slept. Tensions with Clarnell peaked. On April 20th, 1973, Good Friday, after an argument, Kemper bludgeoned his 52-year-old mother with a claw hammer as she slept, decapitated her, used her head for oral sex, then placed it on a shelf to yell at. He cut out her larynx, trying to garbage dispose it, later joking it was fitting since she bitched so much. He lured her friend, 59-year-old Sarah Taylor Sally Hallett, to the house, strangling and decapitating her. Fleeing in Hallett's car, he drove to Colorado, calling Santa Cruz police from a payphone to confess. Initially dismissed as a prank, he persisted until arrested on April 23 in Pueblo. Kemper confessed in detail, requesting death by torture. Tried in Santa Cruz County starting October 23, 1973, he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Psychiatrists debated schizophrenia versus antisocial personality. The jury convicted him November 8 on 8 counts of first-degree murder after 5 hours. Sentenced to life without parole, death penalty moratorium in effect. He requested execution but was denied. Incarcerated at California Medical Facility in Vacaville, Kemper has participated in interviews, narrating books for the blind, and advising FBI profilers like Robert Ressler on serial killers, coining insights into their minds. Paroles denied repeatedly, last in 2019, next eligible 2024. His case influenced Mindhunter and highlighted familial abuse's role in creating killers. Case 9. David Berkowitz. David Richard Berkowitz was born on June 1, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York, as Richard David Falco, to Betty Broder, a waitress entangled in an affair with married real estate agent Joseph Kleinman. Given up for adoption to avoid scandal, he was taken in by Nathan and Pearl Berkowitz, a childless hardware store owners who raised him in the Bronx as their only son. Nathan doted on him, but Pearl's overprotectiveness clashed with David's growing sense of isolation. An average student plagued by bullying for his chubbiness and awkwardness, Berkowitz enlisted in the United States Army in 1971 after high school, serving in South Korea as an infantryman without seeing combat. Honorably discharged in 1974, he returned to New York, working menial jobs like security guard and cab driver before settling as a letter sorter for the United States Postal Service. He briefly attended Bronx Community College but dropped out, living alone in dingy apartments while grappling with abandonment issues after learning of his adoption at 19, which fueled resentment toward his biological mother. Berkowitz's spiral deepened amid loneliness and mental health struggles. He joined a satanic cult briefly in 1975, but claimed disillusionment, though occult interests lingered. Plagued by headaches and hallucinations, he began hearing voices from demons, particularly through his neighbor Sam Carr's black Labrador, Harvey, whom he believed was possessed and commanding him to kill. This delusion birthed the Son of Sam, a moniker he adopted in taunting letters to police and media. His attacks targeted young couples in parked cars, using a .44 caliber bulldog revolver, evoking terror across New York City during the sweltering summer of 1976 and 1977, a period already marred by blackouts and economic woes. The spree commenced on July 29, 1976, in the Pelham Bay section of the Bronx. Berkowitz approached 18-year-old Donna Loria and her 19-year-old friend Jody Valeni as they sat in Valeni's Oldsmobile after a night out. Firing through the window, he killed Loria instantly with a shot to the neck and wounded Valeni in the thigh. She survived, describing a white male with curly hair. 3 months later, on October 23, in Flushing, Queens, he shot 20-year-old Carl Denaro and 18-year-old Rosemary Keenan in their Volkswagen. Denaro survived a head wound requiring a metal plate. Keenan escaped with minor injuries. On November 27, in the Bronx, 16-year-old Donna DeMazy and 18-year-old Joan Lomino were shot on Lomino's porch after a movie. Both survived, but Lomino was paralyzed. The new year brought escalation. On January 30, 1977, 26-year-old Christine Freund and her 29-year-old fiancé John Deal were attacked in their car in Forest Hills, Queens. Freund died from head wounds. Deal survived unscathed. Berkowitz mailed his first letter to police in April, after the March 28 slaying of 19-year-old Virginia Voskerikian, an Armenian student walking home in Forest Hills, shot in the face at point-blank range. The letter, addressed to Captain Joseph Borelli, proclaimed, "I am the son of Sam. I am a little brat." It detailed cravings for blood and warned of more killings. Media frenzy ensued, with the New York Daily News columnist Jimmy Breslin receiving a chilling missive on May 30th, postmarked "Happy Birthday, Sam," riddled with symbols and threats. Violence peaked in the summer. On April 17th, 18-year-old Valentina Suriani and 20-year-old Alexander Esau were murdered in their car in the Bronx, shot multiple times. Suriani died at the scene, Esau hours later. Berkowitz left a letter nearby for police, ranting about Father Sam and listing aliases like the Chubby Behemoth. On June 26th, 20-year-old Judy Placido and 17-year-old Sal Lupo survived shots in their car after leaving a Queens discotheque. The final attack occurred July 31st in Brooklyn's Bensonhurst, where 20-year-old Stacy Moskowitz and her 20-year-old date Robert Violante were shot in their vehicle. Moskowitz died the next day, Violante lost an eye and suffered partial blindness. A parking ticket issued near the Moskowitz scene on July 31st proved pivotal. Issued to a Ford Galaxy registered to Berkowitz in Yonkers, it drew Detective James Justice's attention. Surveillance at his Pine Street apartment revealed trash bags of ammunition and maps marked with crime scenes. Arrested on August 10, 1977, as he left for what he claimed was a planned massacre in the Hamptons, Berkowitz confessed during interrogation, attributing killings to demonic commands via the dog. He pleaded guilty to 6 murders and 7 attempted murders on May 8, 1978, in Brooklyn Supreme Court, avoiding trial. Sentenced June 12 to 25 years to life for each murder, totaling 365 years, with additional time for attempts. Psychiatrists diagnosed paranoid schizophrenia, but courts deemed him competent. Incarcerated at Attica, then Clinton Correctional Facility, Berkowitz converted to Christianity in 1987, renaming himself Son of Hope. He has expressed remorse in interviews, blaming pornography and occult influences, and refused parole hearings since 2002, last denied in 2022. The case inspired Son of Sam, laws restricting criminals' profits from media, though overturned for free speech. New Yorkers remember the Summer of Sam as a time of curfews and fear, with the .44 caliber killer symbolizing urban paranoia. From the demon-driven shooter who paralyzed a city to a charismatic cult leader whose followers turned a Hollywood haven into a slaughterhouse, our final case delves into the manipulative mind that orchestrated one of the most infamous massacres in American history. Case 10. Charles Manson. Charles Manson was born on November 12, 1934, in Cincinnati, Ohio, to 16-year-old Kathleen Maddox, a runaway involved in petty crime, and an absent father, Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr., a con man who denied paternity. Manson never knew his father, taking the surname from William Manson, whom his mother briefly married. Kathleen's alcoholism and incarcerations left young Charles shuttled among relatives and reform schools. At 13, after his mother tried to foster him for a pack of cigarettes, he entered Guybolt School for Boys in Indiana, escaping repeatedly. By 16, he committed armed robberies, landing in juvenile facilities where he endured abuse, learning guitar, and developing an interest in Scientology and hypnosis. Released at 19 in 1954, Manson married Rosalie Willis, fathering a son, Charles Jr., but his auto thefts led to federal prison at Terminal Island. Divorced while inside, he remarried Leona Candy Stevens in 1959, fathering another son, Charles Luther, but more crimes, check forging, extended his sentence. Paroled in 1967 after serving 7 years at McNeil Island, he moved to San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury during the Summer of Love, attracting followers with his apocalyptic philosophy blending Beatles lyrics, Bible verses, and race war prophecies he called Helter Skelter. Charismatic and manipulative, the 5'2" ex-con gathered a family of disaffected youth, mostly women, at Spawn Ranch near Los Angeles, funding communal life through theft, drugs, and prostitution. Key members included Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, and Charles Tex Watson. Manson's delusions centered on inciting a black-white race war, after which his family would emerge from a desert hideout to rule. Rejected as a musician, despite connections to Beach Boy Dennis Wilson, he targeted the elite. The spree began August 8, 1969, at 10,050 Cielo Drive in Benedict Canyon, leased by director Roman Polanski and actress Sharon Tate. Manson sent Watson, Atkins, Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, who turned witness, to totally destroy everyone as witchy as possible. They murdered 26-year-old Tate, 8 months pregnant, her ex-boyfriend, 32-year-old hairstylist Jay Sebring, 25-year-old coffee heiress Abigail Folger, and 35-year-old Wojciech Frykowski. Tate begged for her unborn child's life before being stabbed 16 times by Atkins and Watson. 18-year-old Stephen Parent, visiting the caretaker, was shot in the driveway. The next night, August 9th, Manson joined Watson, Atkins, Krenwinkel, Van Houten, Kasabian, and Steve Clem Grogan for another raid, targeting 433 Waverly Drive in Los Feliz, home of supermarket executive Leno LaBianca, 44, and his wife Rosemary, 43. Tied up, the LaBiancas were stabbed repeatedly, Leno 41 times, including with a fork carving war on his stomach, Rosemary 26 times. Manson left earlier, instructing the killings to leave witchy signs. Earlier that summer, on July 25th, musician Gary Hinman was killed at his Topanga Canyon home by family members Bobby Beausoleil, Mary Brunner, and Atkins over a drug deal. Political piggy scrawled in blood. Arrests followed unrelated charges. Auto theft at Spawn Ranch in August, then Barker Ranch in Death Valley in October for vandalism. Kasabian's immunity testimony linked them to murders. Manson's trial began July 24, 1970, in Los Angeles Superior Court with co-defendants Atkins, Krenwinkel, and Van Houten. Watson tried separately. Prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi argued Manson's control via indoctrination made him culpable despite not wielding weapons. Spectacle ensued. Defendants carved XS on foreheads, later swastikas. Manson attacked the judge. Followers protested outside. Convicted January 25, 1971, of first-degree murder and conspiracy for 7 Tate LaBianca deaths, plus Hinman and stuntman Donald Shorty Shea, killed August 1969 at Spawn. Sentenced to death April 19, 1971, commuted to life in 1972 after California's moratorium. Manson served at San Quentin, then California State Prison in Corcoran, denying parole 12 times, last in 2012. He espoused environmentalism in interviews, fathered more children, and married briefly in 2014 to 26-year-old Afton Burton. died November 19, 2017, at 83 from cardiac arrest and colon cancer complications. The family scattered, some paroled like Van Houten in 2023 after multiple denials. Others remain imprisoned. The case symbolized the end of 1960s idealism, inspiring books like Helter Skelter and films, while victims' families advocated against releases. As we close this series on 10 chilling cases, from Bundy's cross-country terror to Manson's cult of chaos, we've seen how predators exploit trust and vulnerability. Thank you for joining Echo Case File through these haunting journeys. If these stories have left an impact, like this video, comment your thoughts on the most unsettling case, and hit that subscribe button for future explorations into the shadows of true crime. Stay vigilant out there.